So I have thought that for the today is as already pointed out by Professor Chakraborty, that today is the sixth day. And so far you have been hearing from different renowned scholars different accounts of consciousness, both in Indian, both from Indian perspective as well as from the Western perspectives. Now, in Indian perspective, I don't know whether you have already heard about the Upanishadic account, but I think that it is better to start with the Upanishadic account rather than the Buddhist concept of consciousness, as had been requested by Professor Chakraborty. What is the reason? Because we know that in Indian tradition, Upanishad is the Vedas and the Upanishads constitute the earliest philosophical tradition of India. And the later developments of the different schools of Buddhism, like the Nyaya, the Vaisheshikas, the Buddhas, the Jains, all have occurred either as explaining or either as trying to justify this Vedic Upanishadic notion, or refuting these Upanishadic ideas. So, unless we know properly what the Upanishadic thinkers had said about consciousness, it would not have been possible for us to deal with the other systems, deal the account of consciousness of other systems with justice. So that is the reason why I told Professor Chakraborty that I intend to speak on this early Upanishadic account. So let us first to know, first try to এটা গন্ডগোল হচ্ছে let us first try to know what is একবার আসবি what is meant by the what is meant by Upanishads. All of us know very well that Upanishad refers to the এরপরটা যাবো কি করে সঙ্গে যেতে হবে No, Upanishad signifies a teaching received while sitting at the feet of the preceptor, that is the Guru. There are more than 200 Upanishads. Of them, 12 are considered to be the major. The major Upanishads are classified into three groups according to chronology, namely the five early prose Upanishads, whose time can be said to be 700 to 500 BC, five verse Upanishads, 400 to 100 BC, and two late later prose Upanishads, whose time is 100 BC to 100 AD. Now, you might think, what is the method of by which method did the Upanishadic thinkers present their view? The answer is that in the Upanishads we do not actually find any systematic statement of doctrines as we find in the later philosophical literature. But what we find in the Upanishads are nothing but the essence of what has been stated in the Vedic tradition. So, and this has been stated with the help of with rational arguments. But these rational arguments are mostly presented in the form of dialogues, and they try to convey truths with the help of using symbols, narratives, metaphors, and concrete images. So, just as in Western philosophical text or Indian philosophical text, we find the establishment of establishment of any doctrine with the help of logical argument. Here in the Upanishads, we do not find any such argument, but we cannot say that there is no argument. These arguments are mostly given with the help of analogy, and these analogies are also presented in the mode of conversation. Okay, so this is the methodology. So after giving a very brief account of what is meant by the Upanishads and what sort of methodology we find there, we proceed on to the discussion on consciousness. Now, this discussion on consciousness occurs in the Upanishads in the context of explaining the nature of the self or Atman. And the term Atman or Atma in singular is derived from the root auto, signifying constant movement, and the suffix mon added to it. Now, those among the participants, those who are with from the Sanskrit background can know very well that in Sanskrit most of the words are derived from some root verbs with the help of certain suffixes or prefixes, or sometimes both. In the case of the word Atman or self, it has been said that the root is, or the root verb is auto. Auto means movement. And along with auto, we have the prefix mon. So, since the verb auto signifies constant movement, we can say, and one is one who has that characteristic. For example, you all have heard about the word buddhiman. What does the expression buddhiman means? One, here also we find that the suffix mon is added to the word buddhi. So, and what does that mon signify? When we add the suffix mon, it actually signifies that the person possesses that characteristic. What is the characteristic? That characteristic is buddhi in the context of Buddhism. Similarly, in the context of the word Atman, the suffix mon signifies one who possesses. So, what does he possess? Auto. Auto signifies constant movement. So, by the word Atman, it is meant one who possesses constant movement. That is, so from this we can say that consciousness refers to two characteristics, namely constancy and eternal existence. It must be noted here that being constant, that is, for the Upanishadic thinkers, this consciousness is something which is eternal and which is always present. Okay. Yeah. It it is often referred to with the help of the terms Chit and Atman. Uh, Chit refers to Chaitanya, which is the Sanskrit synonym of consciousness. And as I have mentioned in point 3, that constancy and eternal existence are the sole characteristics of this consciousness. So we can say that when the Upanishad speaks of consciousness, they take consciousness to be pure consciousness, a kind of trans empirical consciousness, which not only is different from the empirical consciousness. The empirical consciousness means the consciousness that belongs to particular individual human beings or to particular beings and so on. For the Upanishadic thinkers, this pure consciousness constitutes the very basis of the individual consciousness, which is often referred to as Aham Chaitanya or I consciousness. Now, you might think, where does, you might think, how can we say that whenever the Upanishadic thinkers speaks of consciousness, that consciousness is nothing but pure consciousness? What are the lines? What are the references for that? Now, I have referred here to certain very, very famous Upanishadic statements, namely, which might be known to all of you, namely, Sarvam Khalidam Brahma. That is, Sarvam. Sarvam means everything. Kholu means is. Idam Brahman, when everything is identified with the Brahman. Then we have another sentence like Tat Tamosi. Tom means you and Tat means that. So you are and Osi refers to the verb to be. So Tat Tom Osi refers means that you you means anything other than me. So anything other than me are also identified with that. What is that? That is Brahman. Okay. So the first sentence asserts that everything in the world is identified with one ultimate entity, namely the Brahman. The second sentence says that you, that is, persons other than the subject, are identified with that Brahman. The third sentence says Soham or Aham Brahmasmi, that is, I am that, or I am the Brahman. So here in this third sentence, I find that I am being identified with the Brahman. In the second sentence, you have I refers to the subject, the individual. So me, the individual, is identified with Brahman. In the second sentence, we are said that beings other than the self are identified with that Brahman. And in the fourth sentence, we have Ayam Atma Brahma. That is, this self. What is this self? This self means this individual self. That is that which I am referring to with the expression I. So this self is Brahman. And what? So we've through these four sentences, we are actually emphasizing the fact that the individual subject and things other than the individual subject are all identified with Brahman. So you may ask that here, what has been said is regarding the Brahman, but we are talking about consciousness. So where does consciousness occur here? My reply is this. My reply is that all these refer to consciousness. How? Because if we look at how the Upanishadic thinkers consider Brahman, we find that Brahman is regarded as Sat Chit Ananda. That is, Brahman is not one who possesses Sat Chit Ananda. That is, he is identified with these three. Sat means existence, Chit means consciousness, and Ananda is bliss. Of these three characteristics, this Chit or consciousness is what we intend to discuss here. So, when we are referring to Brahman, it actually stands for consciousness itself. And from the second sentence, from the third sentence, we can say that I and you. And from the first sentence, we can say everything. All these are nothing but Brahman, who is identified with consciousness. This actually implies that this consciousness is the only reality for the Upanishadic thinkers. And when this absolute consciousness, pure consciousness, which is the only reality, gets limited by gets limited by the limitations of the body, the sense organs, etc., then it becomes, then that pure consciousness becomes the individual consciousness, which we are referring to as the I or the you or the other beings, etc. So this means that this means that for the Upanishadic no, for the Upanishadic thinkers, there is no difference between I, you, and other things of the other things of the universe, because all are identified with that pure consciousness. And as the description, as the description of this consciousness, they have used certain expressions like like Atmo Jyoti. uh, Atmo Jyoti means the consciousness is its own light. Consciousness is its own light. That is, it is self-luminous. Actually, what the Upanishadic thinkers want to stress is that if one possesses consciousness, then one does not need any other medium to establish that he has consciousness. The fact that he has consciousness is revealed, is comes out from consciousness itself. That is why consciousness is regarded, has been compared to light. Mm. Light here does not signify simply consciousness and its conditions in an abstract sense, but also that which helps one to perform all his tasks, that is, sitting, walking, working, etc. Just as light shows itself without the mediation of any other light, similarly, consciousness manifests all objects without any mediation. Consciousness or chit is regarded in the Chandogya Upanishad as the supreme light, as the supreme light. And since the self, uh, both in the sense of individual selves or in the sense of absolute self, that consciousness is constituted of such pure consciousness. Vijnano ghano evo. That is, it is pure consciousness, a consciousness which manifests all the objects. And it is also said that consciousness is antarjami. That is, self is the inner controller of all sentient and the non-sentient beings of the universe. He controls everything from within. Now, this characteristic is not very vivid, clear in the context of individual beings. It becomes clear when we take into consideration the metaphysics of the Upanishads. Since the Upanishads regard the ultimate Brahman to be the controller, to be the only entity in the universe. Therefore, this and what we find as something different from that ultimate reality is not actually real. They are simply reflections of that ultimate consciousness, ultimate Brahman in the different locus or different in the different loci. Uh, to explain this, the Upanishadic thinkers give the example of moon. Just as there is one moon in the sky, but when that moon is reflected in different water bodies, we can see that one moon has turned out to be many moons, which actually is not the case. That is, there are not many moons in the world, but still, because of the reflection of one moon in the different water bodies, we can have the idea about different consciousnesses, different individuals. So, in reality, there is only pure consciousness. But when this pure consciousness gets reflected in the individual body or individual limitations, then we have the notion of individual self or individual consciousness. Is this clear? Can you follow my points?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
So the question naturally arises that if, as I have already said, that there is only one consciousness, and that consciousness is pure consciousness, absolute consciousness. And naturally, the question arises, how can that one consciousness, supreme consciousness, gets related to the individual beings? It is in reply. It is in reply to such a question. We can refer to the following illustration of the Chandogya Upanishad. As I have already said regarding the methodology of the Upanishads, that is, in Upanishads we have uh, arguments which are actually given in the form of narratives, in the form of illustrations, in the form of similarities. Okay. Here also, in answer to the query, how can one absolute consciousness get related to the individual consciousness? It has been said, the Rishi no, has brought in the illustration or brought in the example of different items made out of clay. We know that when the potter, is making some items out of clay, he does not always produce the jar. he also produces from the same art. uh, he produces sometimes glass, sometimes he produces sometimes glass, sometimes plate, sometimes vessel, and many other things. Now, all these are different from each other. That is, the shape and size of the plate is different from the shape and size of the cup or the shape and size of a doll. But one point is common among them, that is, all of them are made of clay. So, clay is their essence. So, in respect of essence, all these different items are identified, are similar. If we can understand this example, we will be able to understand the case of Brahman, the case of the relationship of the Brahman with the individual. How? Because Brahman, we have said, is pure consciousness. So this pure consciousness, when this absolute pure consciousness is transformed into into the shape of a man, we have human consciousness like my consciousness, your consciousness, his consciousness. In this way, we can have different individual consciousness. But since all these different individual consciousnesses are actually transformations of that pure consciousness, therefore, we can say that this pure consciousness gets related to the individual consciousnesses without any problem. In fact, all the individual consciousnesses have as their essence that pure absolute consciousness. Okay, so in this way, the one ultimate consciousness can be related to so many individual consciousnesses because this constitutes their essence. Now, there's someone may say, what is the proof? How do you say? How can you prove that every individual consciousness is related with that absolute consciousness? Because we do not perceive that absolute consciousness anywhere among the individuals. So how can you say that all the individuals are related to that Brahman or pure consciousness? In reply, the thinkers, Upanishadic thinkers, give the illustration of a small seed. Hmm. When you look at a banyan tree, the banyan tree is a huge, big tree, but the this the huge, big tree is contained. The essence of this huge, big tree is contained in the uh, uh, mm, uh, in the seed, is contained in a seed which is very, very minute, very, very small. So just as a small seed can contain the essence of the entire banyan tree, similarly the pure essence can be the source of everything. Okay? So that pure consciousness is not accessible to the ordinary modes of knowing. For example, when we look at the seed of the banyan tree, it is so minute that you do not find the entire banyan tree in that seed. But when this seed is sown in the ground, then it turns out uh, in course of time to such a huge tree. So we can say that this seed actually contains the essence of the tree. Similarly, here, that pure consciousness constitutes the essence of everything in the world. So we do, and as constituting the essence, it is related to all the individual cases. Though we do not perceive this pure consciousness by our ordinary modes of knowing. Another alternative reply has been given in the same Chandogya Upanishad. There, the simile, or there the analogy is drawn between the pure consciousness, between the relationship of pure consciousness and individual consciousness, with a bucket of water and one and a handful of salt. Okay, handful of salt. It is said that suppose it is said that suppose you put even 1 kg of salt in one bucket full of water and mix it. Then, if you later on try to find out where the salt is in the water, is it in the top or is it in the bottom? You will nowhere find the salt. But still, if you test the water of the bucket, you will feel it to be salty. So this indicates that salt is there. You cannot deny the existence of salt in the water, but you cannot see it through your normal eyes. So just as salt put in water makes the water salty, though the salt cannot be found anywhere in the water, similarly, consciousness is embedded in all individual beings, though that cannot be perceived by any ordinary means. So far, we have talked about absolute consciousness, pure consciousness, and we also have talked about individual consciousness. And these individual consciousness, or these which actually, who actually are, which actually are referred to as different individuals. So naturally, the question arises, who is this individual? Now, that is, whom you have already referred as Ahong, as Tom, or thought, etc. That is as I, as you, as he, etc. What is the nature of such individual? The Upanishads have used the expression Shoriratma to denote the individual self. Shoriratma means the Atma, the Jiva, which is encased in the physical body. So here we find two things, Sharira and Atma. This Atma is consciousness, and this consciousness is encased, that is put in the structure of the physical body. Now, naturally, the question arises, how is consciousness then related to the body? In spite of the use of the expression Shoriratma, Jiva or the individual is regarded as different from the body. The Sharira, the senses, the Indriya, the mind, the Antakarana, the vital breath, prana, and also intellect or buddhi. So naturally, the question arises. Earlier, I have said in the last line that the jiva or the individual is different from the body, from the senses, both external and internal, the vital breath, and the intellect. So naturally, the question arises, what is this Chaitanya then in the context of the, in the case of the individual? The reply is that Chit is not identified with either the prana, the manas, and the indriyas. The prana is born of the chit and it comes into the body along with manas. When the prana is present in the body, all the sense organs function, and when it leaves, the senses cease to operate. That is Chaitanya. So Chaitanya is there in the body so long as prana is there. When the prana, when the prana ceases from the body, then also consciousness ceases to exist in that body. Now, after discussing the nature of the self, uh, as we find in the Upanishads, especially in the Chandogya Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, etc., let us pass on to another very, very interesting topic of the stages of consciousness. In our ordinary life, we we see that we undergo or we have different stages, different stages where our consciousness varies. For example, when I am awakened, then the sort of consciousness that I have is certainly different from the consciousness when I am dreaming. There also I have consciousness, but that consciousness is not identified or cannot be regarded to be the same as awakening consciousness. Again, if I, through the process of meditation, When I reach a stage when my mind is completely absorbed in meditation, there also there also consciousness is present, but that consciousness is something supreme, and that is not that is different from our awakening consciousness, dream consciousness, and so on. So
Uh,
natural.
Madam, excuse me, Madam, if you can leave some time for question answer session.
I
Uh,
uh, I will conclude within 5 to 7 minutes,
okay, Madam, thank you.
and then we can have the question answer for 10 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Mm. Now, yeah, according to the Upanishads, especially in the Mandukya Upanishad, we find that the consciousness, the Mandukya Upanishad actually speaks of 4 stages of consciousness. What are these? These are the waking stage, the sleeping stage, the dream stage, the stage of deep sleep, and that of transcendent consciousness. The terms may be well known to you, namely Jagrot, then Swapno, then deep sleep, Sushupti, and transcendent stage called Turiyo. Now, though the Mandukya Upanishad speaks of these 4 stages of consciousness, in the other Upanishads, we do not find a mention of the 4th category, but we have mention of 3 stages only. And these are these are the first 3 stages, and they have been referred to as the Vishya, the Toyos, the Pragyo, and they are signified by the letters O, U, and Mo, which go to constitute the word, the expression Now, let me explain these 3 stages very quickly. The first stage refers to the waking stage, where the self, the individual, becomes conscious of the external world and has sensual experiences. This signifies the waking consciousness of the self and may be regarded as the outermost appearance of the self. The dreaming stage is the second stage in which the self is internally conscious, experiencing the subtle objects which are created out of the mental impressions of the waking consciousness. The third stage, or pragya, is called is that stage where the individual does not have any desire, does not see any dream, and that stage is regarded as the stage of sushupti. In this third stage, the manifestation is deep sleep. It has become one and is of the nature of enlightenment, full of bliss, an enjoyer of bliss with consciousness as its face. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we have an alternative explanation of this deep sleep stage. In one place, it is said that the individual in the state of deep sleep reaches the maximum of bliss. And in another dialogue, it is pointed out that consciousness in this stage is the ultimate consciousness, which is the light of lights, the truth of truths, the maximum of bliss. I must mention that this Brihadaranyaka, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the fourth stage, the Turiya stage, the transcendental stage of consciousness, the stage of transcendental consciousness has not been mentioned. So that is why we have this kind of expression that where consciousness gets absorbed in the highest amount of bliss, and it is it can realize itself, which is not possible in the early two stages. Now, these different stages of consciousness offer a deeper hierarchical approach involving different levels of experience. And they move from gross to subtle, and from subtle to more subtle, and progressively unfold the meaning of consciousness using different levels of experience. They finally arrive at the most basic, most fundamental, the deepest level where the real nature of the self as consciousness is experienced. So, the central point of the Upanishadic analysis is that consciousness is a necessary presupposition of all our knowing states. To say that there are things but no consciousness is self-contradictory. This consciousness is different from the perceptual triad, act of perceiving, the perceiver, and the perceived object. It is pure consciousness. It is of the nature of light and is self-illuminating. With these few words, I am stopping my PowerPoint, and I now ask for questions from the participants.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I now request our participants to, yes, Shailendra sir, yes, please, you can.
Pranam, madam. Thank you so much for such a illuminating lecture. I have few questions, rather seeking more clarification. My voice is audible?
Yes, yes.
Madam, you told us that Chitta may be considered as consciousness, and Chitta is equal to prana also. So, can we take it as a consciousness, as a property of self? First question.
No, first, let me answer your first question. That is, consciousness, according to the Upanishads, is not the property of any self, is not the property, but it is identified with the self. And in this respect, the Upanishadic concept of the self is different from the Nyaya account.
Okay, madam. And second thing is that in 4 stages of consciousness, 2 stages are related with sleep one is dream stage and another is deep sleep or sushupti. In that state, what is the nature of consciousness? Is it a knowledge form or realization? It means it is a subjective experience, or what it is in these two stages.
In
How would
these in both the stages, that is the stage of deep sleep and also the stage of dreaming, we find that the self the consciousness is present. But what is the difference lies in the fact that in the first stage, that is in the waking stage, what happens is that the individual is having knowledge of the external objects. But in the case of these two, especially the second one, there the object is not external, the object is totally internal. And the second point is that the object cannot be gross, because no gross object can be in your mind. It is only subtle. That is, when I see in the dream about my friends are cannot be there, cannot exist there in my mind. Okay, but they are. I am having experiences about them. And when I move on to the higher stage, that is of deep sleep, sushupti, there is no object. There is no object. So the consciousness gets related to itself. So far, that is in the waking stage and in the dreaming stage, the consciousness is related to something other than itself. But in the stage of sushupti, consciousness gets related to itself. So this is the being related to itself. And since we have earlier said that the nature of consciousness is bliss, so in this stage of sushupti, you are, that is the individual, can enjoy that bliss. But the point is that what he experiences during the stage of deep sleep, he cannot remember later.
Madam, you said very well that nature of consciousness is the nature of light, and in the modern term of science, the nature of light is having two-way attributes. That once it is a wave also, which needs a medium to travel, and once it's a particle, no need a medium to travel. So, in that sense, can we say that Upanishadic concept of consciousness uh, uh, is equally, I mean, it's really like I mean the physical light, the property of
And
the
actually, what you are saying, that scientific account of light, is that light as wave or light as
particle.
particles. Here, when we say light, we actually refer to the working of light. What is the function of light? The function of light is to reveal something. Okay, so this function of revealing is when the light performs this function, it does not require the help of any other light to perform. Okay, similarly, when our consciousness presents anything before us, that consciousness does not require the help of any other consciousness. In this respect, consciousness has been compared to light. They did not refer to it either as a particle or as wave or anything like that.
Thank you so much, Madam. Pranam.
I just want to request all our participants, if anyone has any queries? I think no more questions. Our next speaker is ready, so we can move on for next.
Yeah, before that, let me just thank Madam Madhumita, Madam. Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. I mean, it's a very detailed analysis of the arguments of Upanishads. It's the very statements of Upanishads about the nature of consciousness, and it was really interesting, Madam. Thank you so much for your time and for also for enriching us, Madam. Yes, our next speaker, Professor Frederick, is waiting. So let me just take this privilege to introduce our speaker, Professor.
Giving me the chance. But due to some technical problems, I had a difficulty at the time of joining. Sorry for that.
No issue, Madam. That's okay. That's fine, Madam. It's
I thank all the participants for their patient hearing and also for the discussion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam. Yeah, let me just take this privilege to introduce Professor Frederick